All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Swing Thoughts. Are you in the ready position? Are you ready to have a great time with your friends, Howard and Tim, golf spiritual leader, Coach Tim O'Connor? Well, we're ready. We're all fired up today. We really should just, as soon as we come on this thing, we should just hit record, because all we do is talk golf, and then we hit record and we talk golf, and then, well, here we are. Timmy, how are you, my friend?
I'm very good, sir. Good to see you.
Pretty exciting today. We got a big shot guest with us.
Oh yeah. Ooh.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second.
Next level stuff.
Yeah, we got some next level stuff. Today, I think for the first time in 10 years, this is our 10th season, I don't think you and I have ever discussed the phenomenon that is golf jokes. And
we've told a few, but
I was just trying to think about that. If we've ever actually endeavored to share any golf jokes with our STDs, but today I have found you have done one.
I told one. I told the 4-putt joke.
Okay,
but we'll just leave that
with
for
the 4-putt, the Sevy joke, or the
no the we'll save it for the bit.
All right, we'll save it for the segment. So we're going to do that today. Also, we'll give out some more clues. I should have mentioned last week when we had our little contest thing for the Silver Wax prize package. What I'm going to do is we're going to do it over the course of a couple of weeks. We have had some entries, and basically the contest is very simple. Who is the company that snubbed Swing Thoughts? They wanted nothing to do with this. Hold on a second. We got to start all over again. You know what? Hi, Jeff. How are you, buddy?
Good.
You know what's happened for only the second time in our history. I'm glad I caught it now. I didn't hit record because I saw you hit record. Well, that's fine. You know what I say? Let's just keep your recording going, because this will be fun for the people to see how we do this. Well, we're going to start again. All right. It's not like we lost some gold. It's not like we had a conversation with the great Jeff Hay and it got lost. All right, let's start again. You just keep going.
I'm available every day. So.
Of course you are. Here we go. Here we go. In 3, 2. All right, here we go. We had
for real.
we got a Swing Thoughts breakfast ball there. What you people who are listening to the show don't know is that we hit record about 2.5, 3 minutes ago. Then I looked down and realized that we had dribbled one into the hay, not the Jeff Hay, the high hay. So this is a do-over. Welcome to Swing Thoughts, golf spiritual leader. That's who I am, along with Coach Tim, and we got a big show today. Jeff Hay, who has been around the game of golf long time now. He knows lots of things, lots of people. He's got lots of stories, and it's very impressive that he finally, after 10 years, acquiesced to being a guest on our program. We'll get to that. And you say you've told one. I don't think we've told a lot of golf jokes on the show. You said you've told one.
I told one. Yeah.
Okay.
One golf joke.
Well, we're going to discuss the phenomenon.
We'll hold it for now.
Yeah, we're going to hold it. We're going to discuss the phenomenon that is golf jokes on this program today, as well the Silver Wax prize package. I mentioned last week that we're giving the Silver Wax prize package away if you can guess the name of the company that wanted nothing to do with Swing Thoughts. And we tried, and it wasn't like they said no. They did that thing that people do now when they're uncomfortable and weird. When you ask them for something, they just don't say anything at all. You know what I'm talking about? The kids call it being ghosted.
That's right.
We got super ghosted by this big-time golf company. So ghosted that we decided to make this the theme of year 10. How dare you snub Swing Thoughts?
That's us. We take the high road for sure.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But
we always
we're
talk
not
about
taking it. But we're not taking it personally. We read the book. We're not.
Well, we always talk about not taking things personally, but this time it's personal. Swing Thoughts, year 10. We got that and a couple other things that I've put away. But first, how do we describe this guy? I've known him since I was a little baby boy. I've known him since I think sometime in the early 90s. He was one of the assistants at the National Golf Club of Canada.
I was the head pro there, actually.
Were
I
you
was,
really?
yeah, under Ben. Yeah, I was the golf professional. Remember, Ben always had it was Ben Kern, and then the golf professional, and then so I was an assistant when I
Oh,
came
wow.
there,
Oh, excuse
and then
me.
I got promoted. But thank you for recognizing.
Well, let me start this again. He's the former head professional,
Golf professional. That's what
golf
I was called.
professional
Yeah,
at the National Golf Club of Canada. And then he went off to seek fame and fortune in the state of
very famous.
Florida.
Yep.
Jeffrey, let me finish the introduction, and
Sure.
then you'll have all kinds of time. He was once the director of something at some place, and with Foley and Tom, all a bunch of people we know, and is now a varsity golf recruiter.
Yep.
Jeffrey Hay. Who is the guy that besides Tim? Who is the other guy that you and I have in common? Who always says, "Hey, I ran into Jeff Hay. He's the greatest guy," and I always forget.
I mean, we have some mutual friends at, I guess, at your club. Steve
That's
Hughes,
right. Steve Hughes.
Alan Martin, Steve Hughes and Alan Martin. Yeah.
Yeah,
Grew up
Al's
with
a
them
great
in
guy.
Brampton.
Steve's a great guy. And Al, they often talk about you with affection, as do we here. Don't we, Tim?
Absolutely. Absolute affection,
I appreciate
admiration.
that.
There you go. Yeah. But it's fun. We had Nick Adcock on, I think it was last week.
I worked with Nick. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so cool how all this works. Like even he and I grew
Great
up
guy.
in sleepy London, Ontario.
Yep.
And then he worked at Core and whatnot. So,
He did. And Sean Foley Performance was the last place we worked together. He's a great coach. Yep.
yeah.
From Canada and Florida. Yep.
Jeff, for our listeners, why don't you just take us through um, your evolution, if you will, ascension from the Nash to Core to what you're doing now?
How much time do I have?
Not a ton.
Okay.
Yeah, just kind of make it, it's like, give us the
level.
truncated version, and then we're going to ask you kind of like what
Sure.
you're up to now. We're going to
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was the golf professional at the National under Ben Kern, as you know, Howard. That's where we met. It was a great time. I loved it there, and really got my love for junior golf from Ben, because remember, you had the national junior program there. So I taught that with him. We had some really good players. And then after I left the national, like a few years later, I had an opportunity to go to Florida with Sean Foley to operate a junior golf academy. Eventually, it became Core Golf Academy after some branding that Tim helped us with. And Sean had no tour players when we went down, and I really didn't know him that well. I knew him from both being PGA members up here, but obviously he went on to teach Stephen Ames first, then Hunter, and then Sean O'Hare, Justin Rose, Tiger Woods, Lydia. I mean, he's got a huge stable of players, and it was really fun to watch him evolve as a coach.
Jeff, can I just interject quickly? Were you
Sure.
were you working with Sean? And Sean's been on the show. He's told the story, but were you part of that group still when Sean got the call from Tiger?
Yes, I was. Yeah. I was with him in his house when he said Tiger's going to call me tonight. I remember very clearly.
Seriously.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's when Tiger was. That's when Tiger was Tiger. That was vintage Tiger.
Yeah, 2009. It was after Hank Haney. He was struggling a bit, and I think a lot of people don't realize how far Sean came with Tiger. Like, got him back to number one in the world by a long shot.
That's right. 2013, Tiger won 5 times. Was the number one player in the world again.
Yeah. So huge accomplishment there, as much as Sean was criticized, but when you're up there, people try and knock you down. So, so anyways, yeah, it was great to watch. Like, we would be, me and Sean like to go for the odd beer sometimes, and he'd be on the phone with Tiger Woods while listening. I'd be listening in as he's talking about TrackMan numbers to Tiger. So it was a really great time for me. The academy grew from 2 Canadian kids in 2006 to it closed in 2016. It sort of merged with another academy, but we had almost 60 kids from 21 countries. So it grew pretty big. And during that time, I was operating the academy, I was coaching, but a huge part of my job was to place our kids in college. So I learned the college system very well. I went on from there to be the director of golf for a few years at IJGA, it was called Bishopsgate at the time. It's at Bishopsgate. It's in Howey in the Hills, Florida. And then Sean's academy. Sean was at a different academy. It was called Sean Foley Performance. He didn't own the academy, but They sort of licensed his name, and he was the director of instruction, and they asked me to come on and help with the operation there and help grow the academy, which we really did until we went from maybe 11 to 30 players pretty quickly. But then COVID hit. We had a lot of international kids, and that was that. So I left there in 2022. I worked with a college recruiting company when I was in Florida, and then came back home. I mean, I work a lot between Florida and here now, but a couple years ago, I came back home and started my own recruiting company called Varsity Golf Recruiting. And I just saw the need in the market when I came back. I didn't think that was in 2023. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, to be honest, but I took all the experience that I had down there and the coach contacts and realized the need in the market here, and decided to do it on my own. So that's what I've been doing. I have a relationship with the CJGA, and I'm a consultant operating my own company in Canada, but I have clients from all over the world.
So, Jeff, let me just start with the recruiting, because I think, a lot of people listening, know that colleges recruit young junior players. And, Tim and I have been around. I mean, I friends with Casey and seen a lot of his kids and
Yeah, help his kids
etc.
as well.
Yeah. And just a couple questions. Like, how good does a junior player have to be, and what kind of resume do they have to have before they would come across that you would show that they would show some potential, or you would have interest in them? And then what is the process of taking a junior kid and then getting them and getting a school interested in them?
Yeah, all really good questions. I mean, I think there's a just like there's a wide gap between the best junior players and the not so good ones. Like there's a wide gap between the best college teams in the U.S.
Sure.
and the worst ones. So, if you're a competitive junior player, and I would say, like, I mean, it's getting better and better. It gets harder and harder every year, honestly. But if you're a 4 handicap or better on the men's side, and not, maybe an 8 on the women's side, like it's you've got a chance to play college golf. And that's just a very generalized statement, because there's so many factors that go into recruiting, and coaches, first and foremost, look at scores, right? They want to know if you can help their team. But then you need to be able to be a good student. You have to get into the school. You have to help the team GPA. You have to be a really good kid. Like I always tell my kids, like, they want good players who are good students and good kids, first and foremost. But then there's some other factors that coaches look at. Can they win? Can they hit it far? Things like that. And each coach can be different in that regard. And there's, 1,100 men's teams across all associations and divisions in the U.S., and probably close to 900 women's teams. So there's a lot of opportunities with different coaches looking for different things potentially, but those 3 things are kind of mandatory. It's a very merit-based system, right, as far as academics and scores. So it works very well. The coaches are smart. You're not going to fool them. And for me, working with a player, the most important thing is that we have a good match in terms of expectations. So if I have an average student and an average player, and they want to, it's Stanford or bust, like, that's not going to work. It's not happening. This isn't Varsity Blues where they're paying me $500,000 to pay off somebody in the administration and get them in the back door or the side door. The side door, I guess he was taking them in the side door. So anyways, yeah, that's sort of important to me. And really, yeah, a big part of what I do is to help them become a better candidate. To get on coach's radar, you definitely need to reach out to them first. But
And what age are we talking about? When does a kid, and also, if you could explain, do they come to you, or do you hear about them? And then what age are we talking about these kids starting? 15, 16?
Yeah, even younger than that. It depends on how good you are, to be honest. I mean, it depends on, there's certain dates in the NCAA, which is the biggest association, that matter. Okay. And all players are sort of guided or governed by these dates. So when they reach the ninth grade, they become a prospective student athlete, and this is for Division I, too, where there's scholarship money. There's no athletic scholarship money. There's no money in D3, but they become a prospective student athlete in the ninth grade. Coaches in Division I and II can start speaking to them, communicating with them, initiating communication on June 15th after their grade 10 year. They can go on visits as of August 1st that year, so right before they start grade 11, and then they can sign a financial aid agreement for scholarship in the 12th grade and starting in November. So these dates are the same for everybody, and most kids want to play in Division I or II, but there's other opportunities that we can talk about. But I like to start work. It depends on how good you are. Like I've had players start reaching out to coaches even though they can't respond, like in the 8th and ninth grade. If they're really a top player, they want to get on their radar early, because the best programs are going to be watching kids at a young age and watching them develop, and they're going to, if they're on their list, they're going to call them, text them, email them on June 15th after their 10th grade. So the best players need to be prepared for that to happen. But if you're just picking it up late and you were a hockey player and you're in the 10th grade, you're not going to get on those coaches' radars. Like, you're just not. So the soldiers sort of fall in order. The best kids go to the best programs, and then it sort of goes from there. Other Division I teams, Division II, Division III, and then other associations recruit a little bit later. So that's kind of how it goes. But so players contact me for the most part. I don't really advertise much. I do a lot of word of mouth, and I'm one guy, so I only take on about 12 to 15 kids per class, and that's all I can manage. But I like to get them younger, and even if they're too young, like some parents will tell you, I don't push them off, but I just sort of advise them, and don't and we don't do a lot when they're younger. If I feel like they need to get to a certain level, and then I tell them when we need to engage. It's different.
Yeah.
So everybody's dates are the same for the NCAA Division I and II, but not the timeline can be different based on how good you are.
So Jeff, I think when people think about playing college golf, they think about D1, they think about full scholarship, and I'm sure there's some parents or some people who know of some kids, or maybe even some kids actually listen to this podcast. But if you're thinking of that, the D1, the Stanford or the Pepperdines of the world, how good do you have to be? Do you have to fall out of bed at age 15 and shoot 65 like it was nothing?
Pretty much. I mean, on your home golf course, anyways. 65 is pretty good, but yeah, you need to be playing. Like I have one original saying. I'm sure Howard has a ton, but I have one original saying, and it's, if you want to play with the big boys or girls in college, you better play against them in junior golf.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can't play on little local tours in Ontario and hope to be recruited by the schools you just mentioned.
Like you need to be playing provincial championships, national
Regional,
championships.
national.
Yeah.
They're recruiting national team players. I mean, a lot of those kids are playing amateur golf at a high level. Like, some coaches won't even talk to kids at that level unless they've played amateur golf, which is obviously a lot closer to college. Well, it is college golf, right? So, yeah, you have to play at that level. You have to be damn good. And I do get, just out of lack of knowledge, which makes sense. Like, I get a lot of lists from parents that are just so far off that, it's not even a starting point. So, I have to break the bad news to them. And it's, look, like, we're not going to get responses from these schools. We have to be realistic. There is a transfer portal. If you get really good and want to go in the portal, that's your prerogative down the road. Like, you could have a really good freshman year in Division II and be the #1 Division II player in the country. And if you go in the portal, some Division I school is going to pick you up. It's like free agency.
Is it like, guys, is it like hockey, when people identify good kids pretty young? Like, you talked about, when you say, Timmy, about falling out of bed and shooting 65, like the best hockey players, they get identified fairly early on. Is it similar with golfers, Jeff?
I would say so. And those are the players that typically have access to those big tournaments. They qualify for the big tournaments. They have status on the AJGA, which is kind of like the PGA Tour for junior golfers. They're like fully exempt status. and they continue on that way. But I find in golf, like sometimes the kids that are really, really good at a young age, um, unless they keep working really hard, the other kids will catch them and pass them. That is, being a good player, like it takes an extreme amount of work and effort. So, the talent can be there, but the work ethic has to be there. And I can tell, like with the kids in Canada, they're behind the eight ball from the start because of the shortness of the
Yeah.
season, and they play in some really bad weather in the shoulder seasons. So, I got kids in Florida that are playing year round in good weather.
Hmm.
It's hot down there sometimes, but still, like they're just year round at it every day. So it's a big advantage. So I think for Canadian kids, they really need to understand that to play at that level, they need to work extra hard and play in big tournaments. But if they don't want to play at that level, there's other levels to play at, and you don't need to play in the US junior or the Canadian junior to be able to get recruited.
Yeah. Well, speaking of other levels, I think there's also a lot of idealism about what it's like to play college golf in the US. And for some people, it doesn't work out so well. I remember a young man tracked me down from England,
Mm.
and he played on a college golf team. And his season was like about 8 weeks because I think that they lived in like, he went to a college in frickin' Nebraska or Idaho or something like that.
Yeah,
And
they're all over. Yeah.
and it just, he had this dream of playing in the US and that
Yep.
all would be sweetness and light, and it wasn't. So there is opportunities as you talk about, but I guess you better do your homework.
You better do your homework, yeah, because it's not, visiting a school like Pepperdine or Stanford will blow you away, and you'll want to go there. But, there's a lot of smaller schools in rural areas that don't have the resources or the budget, and it's not the experience that you thought it would be. And I think you have to really go into it knowing those things. And I find a lot of kids from across the pond end up at places that are maybe not what they thought, and they weren't prepared for it. I got an email from one the other day actually. And part of his wasn't so much the school as the weather. He's in Nebraska, and he didn't
Yeah.
realize that he's Spanish. He's from Spain. He's like, the weather's good here. I mean, it's freezing here.
It's
So
like the pioneers. They came
yeah,
over and what's this white stuff?
Yeah.
And I mean, I have
right.
to clear all this land and cut down trees and shit. But
Yeah, yeah.
here's one of the key things I wanted to ask you about, and I'm not sure if it's fair or not, but I'm going to go for it. As you recall, Jeff, I coached the University of Guelph golf team,
Yeah, I
and
know
there's
that.
lots of talk that now general statements are always dangerous, but I'm going to run it by you that when you played golf in Canada for any university sport, they viewed you as a student athlete. So
Hmm.
student first, athlete second.
Hmm.
And you hear sometimes that some Canadian kids go down to the US and it doesn't go that well. The academics, they say, not as good. We're not talking Ivy League, obviously,
No,
but they were treated like athletes who are students. So athletes first. And that they didn't have a good experience. And that, the coaches were, it's all about the team and playing the sport and everything like that. So again, a general statement, but I'd just like to run that by you and see what degree of truth there might be in it.
yeah, I think there's some truth to that, Tim. The coach, depending on the level, like some of the academics I feel are not as strong in the US. Like I know they're not. And I think that's something a Canadian family always has to consider, right? Like what are you giving up from an academic standpoint to go to the US? Okay, and there's other factors like exchange rates and things like that. But um I would say in the bigger programs, like those coaches are under a lot of pressure to win. So they obviously they they have a high demand on time and whatnot when it comes to the sport, and that's their priority. But I would say, most of them the kids have to stay eligible, right? So
Right.
and team GPA and progress rates and things like that are important as well. So they can't completely ignore those things. But I would
Yeah,
say
yeah.
there's some truth to that for sure because they're under pressure to win at a high level and whatnot. But the kids have to stay eligible and they have to progress them and graduate them And so I would just say there's some truth to that. But the Canadian question is a big one. I have to ask Canadian parents, like, what are you willing to give up to have your son or daughter play in the U.S.? Not to say there's not a lot of great opportunities. There is down there, but if academics is the priority, then Canadian schools are pretty hard to beat. And there's some schools in Canada that play in U.S. college golf, as you know.
I want to talk about money for a second, because the rules, the NCAA or the university rules changed a few years ago for football, and I'm assuming for other sports as well, where the athletes, these football programs, they're generating tens and tens of millions of dollars each year. I mean,
Yep.
Belichick took a job at a university football
Yeah, North Carolina.
school because he's making $10 million a year as the head coach.
Yep.
So I have two money questions. One is some of that money available now for golfers in those programs? And second
yeah.
money question is, how do you get paid? Who pays you?
I get paid for doing podcasts.
Well, that's cool, because we don't, smart guy. I'll tell you what, I'll give you a hint for the Silver Wax prize package. The company that snubbed us. You can enter, Jeff. The company that snubbed us.
That might be Varsity Golf Recruiting.
Listen, is that your company's name? Varsity. We have room here for Varsity Golf Recruiting. Okay, so how do you get paid? Who pays you? The parents or the
parents pay me? Yeah, I can't be paid by the schools. No, that's not allowed.
So
and there's
a parent engages you.
Yep.
Someone who says, "Oh, I think our kid has what it takes. They're a scratch at 15. They played in these tournaments," and they hire a Jeff Hay or a Jeff Hay lookalike, somebody, an imposter. They hire you, and how long is that usually a contract up to? There's no guarantee, I'm sure.
Yeah, you can't guarantee. According to NCAA rules, you can have an advisor, but you can't really have an agent. I mean, things are changing in the NCAA, like you talked about, in terms of it's getting to the point where they're paying players, obviously, because you just brought that up. And the short answer to your question is yes. You can, golfers can take advantage of that, but I'll qualify that in a second. But yeah, parents engage with me to help their kids because they don't understand the recruiting process, and you can waste a lot of time and effort. And the hope is that with my help, they'll have more opportunities and potentially earn more scholarship.
And how long do they engage you for a season? For like, if you get a kid in grade 10, that's 3 years of advising before they're eligible to go to university.
Yeah, and the heart of that advice would be sort of from grade 10 to the middle of grade 11. Like, I would want to have them, well, I wouldn't say that. I would want them recruited preferably in their 11th grade or right at the start of their 12th grade. So it doesn't really go, that's sort of the window to get recruited. I would say that the 10th and 11th grade is like the heart of it, right? So, definitely having me for those couple years, and maybe even a little less depending on how far along their timeline there are from a talent or an achievement standpoint. But in that range is good. So most players I'm with during those times, like the 10th and 11th grade, I would say the halfway through the 10th grade, to the start of the 12th grade would be sort of the wheelhouse. But there's shoulder seasons too, like there's shoulder years. So before that, they need advice, and after they might need like tournament advice prior to that, and eligibility.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you.
Get recruited.
What are you advising them on as players? What tournaments to play? Do you work with them? Do you work with them on a swing, or do you work with their swing coach? And what happens if a parent pays you all this dough? Which is, by the way, parents, money well spent. This Jeff Hay character is quite good. What happens if you get an engagement with a kid, you work with them for 15, 18 months, and they just don't get recruited?
Yeah, I've had some, like, I would say every kid I've worked with has had an offer. So they've had the ability to play college golf. Whether they accept it or not is up to them. And sometimes things change over the course of that time. Like, I've had kids decide they want to be a doctor, and that doesn't jive well with college golf. It's just you can't do the labs and all that and
Hmm.
play college golf. I've had some just not get the academic school to bite on them, and they want high academics, and they're going to go that route. So really, it's more a decision on their end if they want to play, and they find out a lot along the way.
Yeah.
But I help them with. I evaluate them. I tell them where they should fit into the game currently, what they need to do to get to a higher level, where they need to play, recruiting materials, schools to contact, what they do when coaches respond or don't respond. So I coach them on conversations, because after they have contact, the coach is essentially going to want to interview them, and that can be multiple times. And then they go on visits. So what to do and what not to do on visits. Always trying to move them from sort of email to phone call to visit to offer. That's what.
So, Jeff, are you also coaching them on like they're keeping their stats? You're watching how they're doing in tournaments. You're
Yeah,
coaching them on, say, even on course strategy, mental stuff,
I
all
would
those kinds of
say
things.
I would say I give them more like a lot of coaches refer me players, right? So I'm a PGA member. I have a lot of friends in this market and in Florida, and I go back and forth between the two. So I let them coach them. I don't want to be a golf coach, and I really one thing I really would learn from Sean Foley is that if you want to be good at something, you do that thing. Like you don't be a jack of all trades, which I thought was the right way to go. Like be pretty good at everything. But he was so focused on what he did, and I just watch him get so good, right? So in coming home and doing this, I decided that's what I was going to do, just focus on that. And I don't want to step on their toes. So I would say I do watch players play, which in tournaments, which a lot of coaches don't get to do because they're so busy here in the summer, but I'll give them feedback of what I see in the player and what I think they need to do to get to the next level and whatnot. So you mentioned Sean Casey, so I work with Sean, a lot of Sean's players, and I watch them play and give him
Yeah.
feedback. He's one of the busiest coaches going, so that's how I operate with coaches.
So, Jeff, if a player, a Canadian kid, is looking at a couple of different schools and they're of that, say, ilk, that could get a Division 1 or say two uh, ride, if you will. All the coaches are different. It's like you might, like a hockey player might fit in with one team and a coach and a culture
Mhm.
and not with another. What
Yep.
kind of research can a kid do into a team? Is it like, I don't know, you look at the coach's Facebook page? Do you talk to different people? How can you research what that coach might be so you don't get down there and go like, oh crap, I didn't know this was what this person was really like?
Yeah, it's a great point, and it's probably the biggest fundamental in college recruiting is that you need to find the best fit for you, right? And I would say there's four areas that you need to evaluate um, situations on, and that would be academics. It's got to have your major. It's got to be ranked how you want it. Maybe the size of the school, the student-teacher ratio. You can do a lot of this research online. And you need to be able to get into the school. And then athletics, can you play for this team? Are you going to sit on the bench? I mean, most coaches are trying to, which a lot of people don't understand. Most coaches are trying to bring in like a 1, 2, 3 player. They don't want to bring somebody in the ninth position. Those players came in the 1, 2, 3 and they ended up there, right? Um, so it's got to be a good fit that way. You have to be able to help the team and play, I think is very important. Um, Coaching can be a part of that, but coaches can change. At a certain level in college golf, it's a little bit transient, like they moved it around a little bit. So, you can't really make a decision solely based on the coach because that
Well,
might not
I'm gonna
work out.
interject, but I think maybe do you tell the kids in a way that when they're being interviewed that they could actually also interview the coach? It's a,
Absolutely.
they try
Yep.
to get a sense of,
Yeah.
okay, in certain situations, how do you act? Because I'm sure that there's many players who, let's say their play falls off, they get forgotten about,
Absolutely. You
and
can
their
absolutely
coaches,
ask those questions. Yeah. Team
yeah.
culture, coaching style, and what do you do in those situations? Yeah, to a large degree, you're trying to make sure it's the best fit for you, and they're doing the same, right? Are you the best fit for the team? So yeah, I prepare kids to ask those questions in calls and visits. And then the last two things are, social, like, does it fit you socially? Most Canadian kids can assimilate into most situations. And then does it fit your financial? Does it fit your parents' budget? These are the
Yeah.
areas that we're evaluating.
Well,
Before
you
we
said-
let you go,
No, I was going to say, just to jump on, you said
ahead.
parents' financial budget, because
Yeah.
in a lot of, when people talk about a scholarship, most people think of, like, you've seen something in the movies where you get a full ride. Is that the case, or is it usually some hybrid where it's a partial, they get on the team, but the parents also have to spend some money?
It's usually a hybrid, I would say, in general. They can, in most cases, you can receive athletic and academic money stacked. Coaches often want to know what you're going to get academically first, so they'll take the transcripts to admissions and see what you're going to qualify for, because that's very merit based, and then they'll add on top of that, and academic or athletic money can get better as you go along,
Because these schools are expensive. I mean,
they
you're
are,
talking,
Oh my
some
God.
of them are
50,
85 grand.
I was going to say
85
50
grand
to
a year, US.
100. So
Whoa.
what? Again, I just want to quickly. So what is the point, really? If you're not getting a full ride, what do parents want their? Shouldn't say what is the point. I guess the point is going to a good school to play golf. Hopefully that. But it's not like, how rare is it to get the full scholarship where it's 85 grand paid for?
Yeah, it's more common in the women's game, but I would say in the men's it's pretty rare, unless, again, you're the best of the best.
You're
and you're gonna
phenomenal.
pay,
Yeah.
you're
And
phenomenal.
explain. I know the answer to this, but explain why it's more common in the women's game.
Less, I would say the talent pool is less,
Yes.
and there's more scholarships. Like, until now, as the NCAA changes, especially in Division One, but there's more scholarship money available, even though there's less teams, but there's a lot less.
Isn't it supposed to be the same Title IX?
Yeah,
men
well,
and
that's
women?
what it is.
That's balancing throughout all sports,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So,
But that's that balancing, that Title IX that Tim just mentioned. That is part of the reason. I used to say this to my kids when they were little. These little girls I used to have, Jeff, running around the National, chasing the Swans. I used to say, girls, just break 80. Then Daddy,
then you got a chance.
To break
Yes,
80, you have a chance.
I can help a girl that can break 80.
Tim wanted to say one more thing, and then we're going to wrap you up.
Sounds good.
I don't think I can let you go without you telling a little bit about the Sean Foley story, how he ended up at a college in Tennessee, and it ended up being okay, but it was a big surprise for the Falls.
Yeah, I mean, he played at Tennessee State, and there's a movie about that team, but it was a historically black college, right? So there's schools in the U.S. that are historically black colleges and universities, and he was a minority going there for sure, but he said the experience really shaped his life. Like, there's a lot of stories that he had about there, but obviously a very interesting and probably difficult situation that gave him a lot of perspective, and me too, in learning about everything he went through there. And he had a lot of experience that shaped him as a human. He's a very special guy.
Absolutely.
And that was a huge one for him.
Yeah.
Well, you're a very special guy, Jeff. Hey,
Absolutely.
You guys are too. Appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. It's been a pleasure knowing you since before I ascended to GSL status. Jeff was there for the early years of when I had some issues, as letting many listeners know. I had some issues with some temper issues and I couldn't get past it. And I guess you guys were talking about how I literally have wedges in every pond on that golf course.
At the match.
Well, isn't there a plaque? Isn't there a plaque in the parking lot about the first time, Howard, that you made it through the Club C to the 10th tee rather than getting in your car after 9?
You won the Club C, I think.
Well, I did win the club championship, but it was very. I'll tell you, Jeff was there, Ben was there, a bunch of guys when I first joined the club, and for the first couple of years of the club championship, I was so fucking crazy that I played the front 9, and I was so upset I just went right to my car. Literally, for the first couple of years, I thought the club championship was a 9-hole event. And so when I won it, it took me 5 or 6 years of being there to finally calm down enough to play. And I always talk about this. I still have it somewhere. Ben Kern sent me a card with a handwritten note, like old-fashioned styles, with a bunch of nice things saying, I know how hard you worked. And
What a great guy.
yeah, what a great guy. It was one of those
Yeah.
special moments.
Yeah, he's an amazing man.
Yeah,
Amazing.
very, very good. Jeffrey, great talking to you, my friend.
You too, guys. Appreciate it.
And how do
Thanks so
people
much.
get a hold of you at Varsity Golf Recruiting? What is is there a thing? Is there a site? Or is it
Yeah,
just
varsitygolfrecruiting.com.
Okay.
And my email is varsitygolfrecruiting@gmail.com.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, as soon as we're done here, I'm going to head to the golf course, hanging out with our buddy Al Martin today.
All right. Say hi to Al for
I
me.
will absolutely
I grew up
do
with
that.
him. Yeah. He's a
All
great
right,
guy.
partner. Take care, Jeff. Good seeing you again.
Yeah, you too.
All
See you
right.
guys. Bye.
Jeff,
Take
hey,
care,
look
bye.
at him. A sweet man that he is. All right. Well, there's your. We got. That's. You know, when I was a kid, growing up in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, I played on a provincial golf team when I was 15. I got to play in a national championship against Jim Rutledge. You know that name.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, it was the first time I was ever on an airplane. Was the Saskatchewan Golf Association sent me on my little team. My point, I'm getting to a point, which is I played some provincial tournaments. I qualified for this team. I won the little junior club championship of my course in Moose Jaw. And around 16 years old, I was in grade 12 by then because I had skipped a grade. And I only know this now in retrospect. I only know that at that time, I was good enough to get a scholarship to something. I just didn't know anybody. There was nobody in my universe that had ever done that, had ever gone.
Right.
There was no precedent for anything. Now that may not have been something I ended up wanting to do, but it was certainly, if I had grown up in this area with the kind of game I had as a kid, I may not have been good enough for a Division I school, but I was good enough for a school. I just didn't know that you could do that kind of thing. But having been around the scene here for, Casey and all these guys, I know that I've seen some of his kids that get scholarships. And I guess they're, we're similar to me. They just know, they just have a guy like Jeff, or there's precedent in their lives for that being a reality. And the fact is, you don't need to be a superstar golfer. You just need to be good enough. Like he said, if you're a 4 handicap or less, or you're an 8 or less as a woman, you can get into those programs. But I would ask you, because you coached, so if you're not going to be a star in those programs, what is the point for parents to get them into a Division I school?
That's the hard one to square, is because it really caters to the wealthy. That's just, there's no getting around it. I mean, if you're paying, even if you have to pay, say, upwards of 40 grand US with the exchange, that's a lot of dough, man. And I think it's a big roll of the dice, particularly with culture. You don't know. I've heard there's lots of stories. Unfortunately, there's lots of stories of Canadian kids who went down and it didn't quite work out. And they come back and they finish their degree in Canada. Maybe they play for a university team here. It's a really tough one. And that's why, as Jeff discussed, you really got to do your homework into the culture and know what the coach is like and what you're in for. Because it's an idealized situation. It's kind of like when you watch the PGA Tour on TV and they'll talk about, oh yeah, he's a UNLV grad or came from Stanford, and we think that, well, that's the process. You play junior golf, then you start to play college level golf. Next step, LPGA Tour or PGA Tour. It's just not true.
Well, it was a very interesting conversation, and again, I've known Jeff a long time. He's a good guy, as you have. Just quickly, we're going to continue the contest for one more week. Everybody that's entered, and we got a bunch of them, and you can enter humblehoward@gmail.com. This is from Jonathan Board, who's also a Humble and Fred listener, because he says, should I say hi, guys, which is kind of a thing from our show. His guest, by the way, last week, the clue was this company, this golf company that snubbed us, the snubberoos, they have
These charlatans.
Exactly. Ne'er-do-wells. They're
Hooligans.
what's that?
Hooligans.
Hooligans. These nincompoops have
Scallywags. Can we
That's
keep going?
right. We'll just keep going. These did you say charlatans? I'm repeating it.
I did. I
Okay.
did. That was about four ago.
Are you sure? These people have a commercial which features a lone voice yelling. And that clue, I can tell you there's been some correct answers. This week's clue is their company, this company, if you even call it that, their company has a limited number of letters in the name. A limited number of letters. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. Jonathan Board says, I'm going to say Callaway. Well, John, that's wrong. He says, love the program. Humble and Fred, Swing Thoughts. Jeff and Julie moved to France, another one of the programs that we produce. John says, I bought Tim's book. Aww. The Seven Deadly Sins of Impropriety. And yes, he says, I know my swing is shit, but because of you guys, I took up the game again about 1.5 years ago, and I'm addicted. Keep breathing, boys. Signed, John Board. And he has a picture, he's included a picture of the Humble and Fred beer, but I just realized now he's also
Humble and Fred beer? You guys have a beer now?
Yeah, we've had our own beer for about 1 year. It's
like
cool.
you and Rush? I didn't know this.
Well,
we didn't how come I don't know this?
I don't know. I'm sure I told you, but then, we're both old guys, and we can't be counted on to...
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's Humble
Geddy
and Fred
Lee
beer.
has a beer. Humble has a beer.
For about 1 year.
GSL, I mean.
You can call me Humble, too. So he's included, I realize he's included a video of his swing. It's not bad. He says, I know my swing is shit, but I've taken up the game, and I'll just say this, John, your swing's fine. He's got a good setup. He takes a mighty lash at it, and yeah, he's fine. You're fine, John. Don't worry about it.
You got the GSL blessing, John. There you go.
Yeah, really. Like I know what to tell you, John. It looks good to me. Would you like to just take over for a second while I prepare my dog? He's being picked up right now. Why don't you just tell everybody something about yourself? And why don't you tell everybody a little thing or two about how they can get your book? And actually, I picked out your. I have a little file now with all sorts of Swing Thoughts stuff, and I picked out your latest. I like to save it. Your latest Substack, and it's titled "You Can't Control Your Mind, but You Can Respond to It." And I'll be right back.
Yeah, that was about largely the story, and the story that Rory McIlroy faced going into this Masters about all the missed majors and the times in which he missed short putts down the stretch, and just how he just carried the weight of history on his back. Everyone knew it, including Rory. But I think and that happens to all of us. I mean, we're playing, let's say we're on the way to a career score or winning, say, your flight in the Club C or some event, and something goes wrong as things do in golf, and then we start to get into the story. Oh, this always happens to me. I can't close. I'm a choker or whatnot. And what I was saying is that, and Rory admitted that during Sunday's round, that roller coaster ride from hell, that he thought at a couple points this is slipping away. But I think now we obviously can't read Rory's mind. And I think we'll learn down the road as he talks more about it, is that what he was able to do, and I think all elite performers are able to do this, is that, yes, we have a negative thought. We get into a little bit of a story, and it's like, oh, I'm in the story. What do I need to be? Well, for performers, it's about taking care of business, the task at hand. And just usually that's just process, just going through what you do every time. And when you occupy your mind with that process, whatever it be, like evaluating the shot, deciding on the club, getting into your setup, all that stuff, you kind of keep the story at bay so you can just take care of business. And I think that's what Rory did. And how's this for a segue?
No, it's
I think that's what the Toronto Maple Leafs got to do.
Yeah. No, the Toronto Maple Leafs are done. Don't worry about that. They're just done. I feel bad for you guys, but they're They're done. They should just forget they should just take the franchise, shut it down. I want to get back to
Burn
Rory
it.
though. Like that was what was so impressive about that, especially because, we've all, whether you're a tournament player like me and play a lot of events, but we've all been in situations where it just slipped away for a second, or you might, and his situation was so exacerbated by the fact that it was the Masters and it's Rory and the Grand Slam and all this things. And I think we witnessed, and I love what you said about as time goes by, he'll reveal more. But just as time goes by, I think we'll see and look back at that as really, truly one of the great performances of its kind, because it wasn't great from the first tee to the end. Like, it wasn't a runaway victory. It was a hard fought, bed shitting, like crazy shit that happened. That I'll never forget, an 82-yard wedge that he could have gotten on the green one-handed in other circumstances, but the recovery from it, like, it's mind-blowing, which is one of the reasons I loved your blog, your Substack, because, it just goes to show all of us that there is an opportunity to reset every moment of our lives, and especially when it's in a golf situation, it's a great lesson for us.
Yeah, I mean,
That you remind us.
Yeah, thank you. So, especially in those high stress moments, we want something so badly. I mean, I remember the first time, I had a chance to break 80, and I had about a 4-foot putt for par. I was 7 over, and of course I missed it. And I picked the ball up. I turned around and threw it in the pond, and
Nice.
I
That's
was
my boy.
pissed off. And then it was about a week later, same situation, same hole, 7 over par. I had about a 4-footer, and I don't know, I can't remember because it was many, many years ago, but I just drilled the putt, bang, my first time, 79. And just kind of grew from that experience, if you will. But it's so easy to get sucked into the story, because once again, it's this punch to the gut. I'm sure when Rory hit it into the creek there on 13 on Sunday, that was a feeling he'd had before, that
Yeah.
and that he, all the same sort of emotions came up and feelings in his body, but he was able to, this time, I think, witness what was going on and just say, okay, I see this, I feel it, but I just got to put that to the side and just deal with what I need to deal with.
And I think for all of us, there's so many great takeaways, but just to finish up here, I think for all of us, when we find ourselves in situations where we hit a particularly maybe out of character bad shot, just hearken, my new favorite word, just hearken back to that Sunday on the 13th hole.
Yeah.
For a guy that at his level, that might be one of the worst shots I've ever seen a guy that good hit. So what about the rest of us? We suck. Of course, we're going to hit some shots that are, untoward or whatever. But, I think I need, for me, I've definitely synthesized that lesson of like, well, it can happen. And I've made mistakes before. And we've talked about on the show over the years, like some of the most satisfying moments that we all have, myself in particular, is when you make a mistake or something happens under pressure and you're able to come back. Because that's a rare thing.
Yeah. One of the best stories I ever heard told by a PGA Tour player about dealing with the thought was Jason Day. So you recall, I don't know, that was 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah, PGA Championship, yeah.
Exactly. So he was one of those guys who had the mantle, the one they don't want, is best player never to win a major.
Mm-hmm.
And here he is at Whistling Straits. He comes to the 72nd hole. He's got a 3-shot lead over Jordan Spieth, who he's playing with. And so he gets to that tee, and so he's getting ready to hit a shot. What's the thought he has? Don't hit it into the shit.
Yeah.
That's the thought that comes. And so he's just like the rest of us. They're just as whacked out as the rest of us. They're crazy. But he had a process. So one of the things he talked about, and this was about a week later or 2 weeks later at the Canadian Open. So part of his process was when he had a negative thought, he would visually take the thought and put it on the ground like it was a piece of garbage and
Yeah.
step on it.
Love that.
And then he went through his process. And as you recall, he had this quite the process. He'd stand behind the ball and he'd hold the club up, and his
Visualize, yeah,
eyelids would do this sort of thingy, and he'd
Flickering.
imagine whatever exactly, and then he hit a shot, and actually after he hit before he hit the approach, it was the same thing. Don't hit it in the water. He went through the same process, and he won his major. So they're just as whacked out as the rest of us, but they invest themselves in the process. Just take care of business. It's nothing magical. There's no secrets. They just invest themselves in process. You just hear elite performers of all kinds talk about that. So
we're getting to the end of our time here, Tim. What's your remind me of your four putt joke? I can't remember it, and even after you tell me, I may not be able to remember it. What was it? Because the point is, we really haven't been telling a lot of jokes here on this show.
Okay, I'll tell
me your
joke. So Lisa feels like she and Henry are just not connecting in their marriage. So she arranges for them to go to this lovely little restaurant that they love to go to, and they've had so many sweet times and connection over that. So they go to the restaurant, but he's just not talking. He's staring at the window. It's just not happening. So she goes, "Well, I think I can keep this going or make something happen." So they go, "Hey, honey, let's go to that little piano bar we've always enjoyed." So they go to the piano bar, but it's still not happening. They're not connecting. They're not talking. And so very disappointed. They go home, and she gets her diary out and she rolls away from him. She goes, "I don't know what's gone with our marriage. It's just, is it over? I'm stuck." And Henry gets out his diary and he goes, a fucking 4-putt.
Yeah, I like that joke. It's a good one.
It's my only golf joke. It's my only one.
Here's a bunch of short ones. I came across this thing the other day online. I saw a bunch of golf jokes. Here's one. That's a USGA putt. You know what a USGA putt is? You suck, go again. I like that. This guy says, I heard this from a caddy at Pebble Beach. Player, can I get a 5-iron there? Caddy, eventually. But I like that one.
Yeah.
Played with a guy at a place called, doesn't matter where. On the second tee, he chunked his shot really bad. Turned to us and said, "The course I normally play is 2 inches lower than this." Which I loved.
That is awesome.
Yeah. The course I play is usually the course I usually play is 2 inches lower. But this is the one I picked out. Buddy to me says, "Nice day today. Thought you and Rick would be golfing." Me, "I don't golf with Rick anymore." Buddy says, "Why not?" Me, "Would you golf with the guy that lies and cheats and is always trying to screw your wife?" Buddy, "No, I guess I won't." Me, "Yeah, well, Rick won't either." So there you go. Just some fun little golfy jokes.
Well, here's the best
golf
line.
Jokes.
Here's one of the best lines I ever heard from a golf wag, Ian Crookshank. Always had some good ones. And I remember him just saying, "Oh, you know what your problem is? You stand too close to the ball after you hit it."
That's very good. One of my favorites was one of my favorite lines from a golf pro. A friend, a guy that Jeff Hay and I knew very well back at the National, a guy named Joe Rice, who was just a legend.
Yeah.
Joe used to say when people would tell him a story, it would be they'd come in after the round, and because he's one of the pros there, they invariably would want to walk them through, and they would start telling Joe about their round. And about the second or third hole they were going through the round, Joe would say, "Hang on a second, am I going to need a cart for the rest of this story?" Which I used to love.
That is a good one for sure.
Thanks to Tim. Thanks to Jim. Thanks to Jim O'Connor. That's why I almost called you Jim.
The curse of the one-syllable name.
Thanks to Jeff Hay. Great job today, Varsity Golf Recruiting. Tim O'Connor, available for your dining and dancing pleasure. His book, Getting Unstuck. 7 ways to make pasta with your children. That's available on the Amazon at pre-tariff prices. What can I tell you? Humble and Fred show. That's still going strong. We're still doing that. Back to where as of today, we've cut ourselves back to 3 days a week. for the summer season, May, June, July, August. We just do 3 shows a week. That's all you get.
Nice. Do you get a best of the other two, or?
No, sir. No.
Oh,
You
yeah,
could
it's a
go and,
podcast. Yeah,
yeah,
you can
just go
do
and
what
look at
the
our
hell you
back
want.
our back. Although we have, when we're away in the wintertime, sometimes we'll release best of shows. Okay, Timmy, thank you very much for today. As always, a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to see our friend Hazy.
And as far as your Leaf, the Leafs are like Rory in that. Here's the thing, but they're not like Rory in this way. Let me start that again. They're not like Rory because do you know that Austin Matthews has only scored 1 goal in 13 opportunities to clinch a series? He's scored once or twice. Same with Marner. Same with all the other superstars on that team. They literally don't have the process. They like in the normal way of things, they would lose and learn. But, and I say this flippantly, but it's only because they just seem to learn to lose. Like they were up 3-0. Ottawa wins that game, and then the game I watched a little bit of it last night when they lost 4-0. Like, how do you explain that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I just think that Ottawa's doing that. Like they can't get a shot through. I don't know. They're just like the power play. They're standing around last night. It's like I think it's like holding the sticks too tight. But of course, that's
Yeah.
all amateur conjecture. But they just don't. They're just not playing with that flow and that. I think there's a carefulness that comes from, I don't know, having things blow up in your face.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
often,
think
I don't know.
I think they're in the same situation that Rory was in. This is where it's analogous that it means so much. Rory took 11 years to win his 5th major, or it is his 5th major, right? He that's 11 years, 14 years removed from the blow up at the Masters, shooting 80 in the final round when he had a 4-shot lead. The Leafs just haven't, as every year that goes by, didn't they win their division this year?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where I go with it is that the swing, I think, on 13 and the swing that went into the pond, creek, whatever, and then the wedge into the 18th and regulation. I think those are swings not to lose.
Yes.
Those are like defensive swings.
Absolutely.
Don't fuck this up. And I don't know. I just think that especially Marner, I just wish there was he's a defensive. He's so good defensively, but they're going to have to play with desperation in Game 6. Just real out and out, fly out of the gate. Obviously not take stupid penalties, but now I'm starting to talk like a person who thinks they know something about hockey.
Well, no, you do, but you're like you have that voice, that tone of voice that all Leaf fans have. It's just like it's like the voice of bewilderment. It's just bewildering. Listen, I've watched every.
I thought it was just whininess.
No. It's like you don't know where even to take it because I've watched every series for the last 7 or 8 years. I watched the Leafs none at all in the regular season, but every April I go, all right, fellas, what do you got this year? And what they get is just tighter and tighter. If Ottawa wins the 6th game, the Leafs are going to lose this series. And then what's the takeaway? You're a mental coach. What's the takeaway from losing? They never get to that point where they move on. Yeah, they get to the second round, but if they get to the second round this year, they're not beating Florida. They just don't have that core 4. They've been there for a long time.
Yeah,
now.
well,
They've
that's
been
it.
almost-
I can't imagine how you could go forward with that. And Marner will be gone because they haven't signed him. He'd definitely be gone, I think. It's all freaking conjecture. I don't know.
It's all sad.
I wrote a blog about it, so it's going to put it on my Substack when we're done today. But really, to lose 4 in a row, I mean, even if you're Dr. Spock, the Mr. Spock,
Okay.
it just doesn't make sense. It just makes sense. That's why games are. I think that's the thing that gives Leaf fans a little bit of hope. Is that okay? This is over 7 games. It wasn't like 3-1 series against Montreal. That was 3-0. And I don't think the Leafs haven't lost more than 3 in a row all year. So I don't know. Well, hope against hope, but I do think that a season with Craig Berube, kind of this what me worry attitude, I think he's been working towards this all year. And even Kevin Bieksa on the panel last night said, you know what? Even going into the third period, these guys seem a little bit different, a little calmer. There's no like heated, conversations on the bench like Nylander saying to Matthews, "What the fuck are you doing?" I don't know. Hope against hope, but again, conjecture. If they lose, it's. I think it's.
Here's the thing.
core
I know.
four is blowed up real good.
I'll say this, and I say this with respect and love for you. You sound like a guy that's addicted to heroin. So you're like, yeah, I mean, even the guy in the panel said, this is not the same heroin that I normally do. It's a different, me never, these guys this heroin seems different. You're addicted to losing to a losing team. It's time to stop, everybody.
I'm going to go for a walk in the sunshine and,
That's right.
and think about gratitude for the blessings of life.
Exactly.
And buds on the tree. Buds on the tree. How's that?
Buds.
Living.
I
Buds
love it.
living.
Well, good luck to you all, you hardy Leaf fans. Until next time, this is Swing Thoughts, and we'll see you next week.
Well, now you step inside, but you don't see too many faces.
Well, there you go. Another fine effort on behalf